Isaiah chapter 48 and verse 3. And as you muse about Isaiah, the generic opening as it relates to Isaiah is that most of our theologians, most of the academic theologians, as opposed to our evangelists, think that there has to be two Isaiahs, because the first 40 chapters and the second 26 chapters are so far apart in their presentation that many of the academic theologians think they're two Isaiahs. For those of us that operate in the arena of the evangelist, and I define the evangelist as the pastor, preacher, teacher from the standpoint of touching other people's lives and standing in between the authority of God and the anointing, and understanding that higher criticism isn't the only way to approach the scriptures, that in many instances there has to be revelation. I'm learning now as I look through the scriptures that there are certain things that the Bible talks about that there's absolutely no way for an individual to know it unless God told it. I hope you understand. You have relationships with people, and there are certain things you find out as you go along with them, as you journey together, as you gnosko. There are certain things you find out about people just by being around them. They didn't have to tell you anything. Your personal observation brought into your perspective the disposition and attitude of the person just simply by being with them. But everybody in here has something about them that you would never know unless they tell you. It doesn't matter how much and how many hours you have spent, it would never come out unless they tell you. I wonder how many things you haven't told. In the same way, it doesn't matter how intellectually astute you are. It doesn't matter how strong you are mentally. It doesn't matter how often you have walked with God. There are certain things that you will never know unless he tells you. And so I have discovered now that God can use one vessel in a particular way at a special kind of time, and totally use the same vessel another way, contingent upon what it is he wants to do at the time. Isaiah, when you read him carefully, you will find not only the poetics and the literature, one of the greatest books anywhere in literature, but when you read Isaiah carefully, you will find that God moves him from the frustration of talking to a group of people that are going to go into exile, and takes him and makes him the eagle-eyed prophet, which looks at the messianic promise of Jesus Christ. He takes him out of his present frustrated environment, and then he begins to show him things that only God could have shown him, because there is nothing in history that could define the uniqueness of Jesus Christ in the way that Isaiah presented him. And so he's called the eagle-eyed prophet, because God took him out of his present, jettisoned him into the future, and showed him things about the Christos, the Christ, that he could not have known except God showed it to him. When we pick up in 48 of Isaiah, and verse 3 says, I have declared the former things from the beginning. And they went forth out of my mouth, and I showed them, I did them suddenly, and they came to pass. because I knew that thou art obstinate, that thy neck is an iron sinew, and thy brow brass. So because of that, I have even from the beginning declared it to thee before it came to pass. I showed it thee, lest thou should have said, mine idol hath done them, and my graven image and my molten image hath commanded them. Thou hast heard, see all this, and will not thou declare it? I have showed thee new things from this time, even hidden things, and thou didst not know them. They are created now, not from the beginning, even before the day when thou heardest them not, lest thou should have said, behold, I knew them. Yea, thou heardest not. Yea, thou knewest not. Yea, from that time that thine ear was not open, for I knew that thou wouldest deal very treacherously, and was called a transgressor from the womb. And it's a scary language, isn't it? For my name's sake, I will defer mine anger, and for my praise will I refrain from thee, that I cut thee not off. Behold, I have refined thee, but not with silver. I have chosen thee in the furnace of affliction. For mine own sake, even for mine own sake will I do it. For how should my name be polluted? And I will not give my glory to another. I want you to look at somebody and just tell them, this one is on God. Look at your other neighbor and say, it has nothing to do with you. This one's on God. Now it's really interesting that he would open up by telling us that he knows everything about us. It's very interesting that he points out our weaknesses immediately. And he calls each one of us obstinate, hard-headed. And I wonder personally sometimes, how much of God's goodness do I have to receive before I reciprocate or I respond in kind? How much does he put in me, and how much does he have to work with me before I come out of this deep hole of selfishness and hard-headedness? How many times does he have to put me through the same thing before finally I capitulate to his grace and his mercy and become what he wants me to be? I mean, how much does he have to do for me to realize how marvelous and how wonderful he is, to the point where I can reciprocate or give him something back? How many seeds does he have to plant before he can get a response? Because oftentimes, I mean, you know, it's like you're doing fine one minute and then the next minute you reverse into that thing you were trying to get out of. I want to talk to some real people today. The obstinance of the human being is so horrible to the point where he or she feels that his or her position is a position that they gained by themselves. When people begin comparing themselves with others and mistreating the people around them because they have made a few positive steps, what God is saying is, I want you to understand that the positivity of your steps, or because you made a few positive steps, don't get beside yourself, because I knew that you would want to take the credit. So consequently, he understands us to the point where he realizes that the Greek word, the Hebrew word here is gashe, that we are hard and cruel. And the etymology, of course, is associated with agriculture, and what it's saying is we're subjected to effect exerted by an overly heavy yoke. And our disposition toward him is that he is moving us in ways that we don't want to go, and the way that he's moving us is not good for us. But I've discovered that God moves us in ways that pleases him, because he understands that if we're left to ourselves, we would make a complete wreck of our lives. And if he does not intervene and move drastically, and he moves us sometimes into the place of affliction, because he discovers that he cannot put us in the place of silver, he has to put us in the place of fire and refine us out of the difficulties that we have to go through until we finally change our minds. I've got news for you. Sometimes we have to almost lose our mind in order to change our minds. Sometimes we got to go through the disappointments and the heartbreaks and the pain to recognize that some things have to be different in our lives. I'm preaching to myself. I thought at 65 I'd have it all together. But I've discovered now that at 65, I have just become a conglomerate of a whole lot of negative things that need to be broken if I'm going to make 85. I want to talk to somebody in here. The rebellious resistance, then, he's pointing out, of an oxen to the yoke context. In other words, I can't move this oxen where I want because the ox is stubborn. And he is saying essentially in the text, there is no need to be stubborn because my yoke is easy and my burdens are light. And so when I begin to guide you and begin to move you by faith into the things that you need to accept and move in, then I'm not trying to hurt you, but I'm trying to bless you. And you have to get to the place where you understand that I'm not here to make your life more difficult. I'm here to make your life better. But the problem, Lord, is that we have been dipped, triple dipped, and double dipped in the things that fill the flesh. And when the time comes for the spirit to emerge in its power, it is the flesh that holds it and keeps it from breaking out. That's why God many times has to move in our flesh and cause our flesh to go through some things before we realize that the real power is not on the outside of us, but the real power is down on the inside. I mean, every now and then you got to ask God, Lord, release the real me from the pseudo me that's trying to hold the real me from expressing itself. There's some good things that I have, and I need to be able to express the good things without the compartment of the negatives holding me down. And so oftentimes then what God is saying is, I've got to show you some new things, and I've got to do it suddenly. I've got to bring it to pass so quickly that you will realize that you didn't set it up. And I'm going to speak what I'm going to do before I do it, so that when it comes to pass, you will know that it was me who brought it to pass. Oh God, I feel it here. Now, I don't want to talk about money now. I'm not talking about money. I'm not talking about you being better off this year financially. I'm not doing that right now. What I want to talk about is realizing who we are and understanding that if I don't have a dime time I am somebody in God. And maybe the reason I don't have any money is God understands if I did, I wouldn't follow his plan into becoming who he wants me to be. I realize, and I'll tell you the truth, that sometimes God keeps things from us in order for us to develop who we are. And then sometimes he takes things from us. Not only does he keep it from us, sometimes he takes it from us for us to realize it's not in the thing, it's in who we are. And we've made things more important than person. And person is number one in the sight of God, and that's why he will move you through anything he chooses to move you through until you become what he wants you to be. And since he's not going to leave you alone, he's going to work on you until you become that person that can stand on your own 2 feet and declare, you can't buy me nor sell me, because I know who God has made me. He's talking to a group of folk that's getting ready to go into exile. And he's saying, I need you to have the proper thinking of who I am. Because the proper thinking of who God is does 3 things to me. The first thing it does is it helps me to understand my real self. Because God is speaking to Israel, and he's saying now that you have had things turned around and quite confused, because I have protected your boundaries, because I have given you all of the pleasures of life, and I've afforded you to be called my people. And you have for some reason become very proud and very self-centered in the midst of it, because you have the wrong concept of me. When you have the right concept of me, you have the right concept of yourself. And the reason I say that is we have taken on the concepts of the people around us, and we have allowed the people around us to dictate to us who we are, because none of us becomes who we are in a vacuum. It's always by and through the conceptualization of others and their verbalization of who they think we are. And nobody knows you like God knows you. And so consequently, when you meet God for the first time, you can break away and break out of the shell that everybody has placed you in. You know, some folk think you're like them because they can achieve certain things. They don't see you achieving certain things. Then some people are controlling of the elements that are around them, and their control is expressed like, you can't make it without me, and if I were not in your life, you would be an abject failure. I'm the real reason you are where you are. Then some people, because they're blind, they have no vision, and because they don't have a vision for themselves, they don't see a vision for your life. So it becomes significant when God comes in that he rewrites the script of who you are. And what he's saying to Israel is, nobody has the power to move you, not even yourself, because I've been dealing with you and I know how treacherous you can be. So when you get blessed, understand that the blessing didn't come from your behavior, the blessing was on me. I'm almost there. When you understand then the relationship you have with God, then it puts other people in proper light. Because once you understand who you are, you can deal with other people with the proper self-understanding. You see, many times you try to get in relationships and people who don't know themselves, and it's really funny, they don't know themselves, so how can they know how to deal with you? Because you can't really know how to deal deal with somebody until you know how to deal with yourself. Because if you look at somebody out of the subjectivity of yourself and you don't have the objectivity that God gives. You see, when God comes into our lives, he gives us objectivity. What he says to us is, you're not all that, because I'm all that. You're not all that, but I can make you more like me if you decide to stop being like everybody else. You see, the problem is, if you're going to be like everybody else, we're going to lose who you are. Can I preach like I feel it? The only thing that makes you distinct in a world that's full of people is you being you. When you stop being you to be like everybody else, you get lost in the crowd. What God is saying, I made you unique because you have value for me, and I need you to be what I want you to be, because I'm the one who put you in the right place. And if you will allow me to put you in the right place, then your blessing is on me, because you can't do it by yourself, and no matter who's around you, they can't do it if I block it. So if you want to be blessed, let me put you where I want you to be, but be yourself. I feel like teaching you. It puts others in perspective. There are times when you understand who you are, you begin to make adjustments, because you have to adjust the people around you according to the new